County Board of Supervisor meetings to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call?
Dale Schleter. Here. Kay Wilson. Here. Tweed Schuman.
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Here. Jason Weaver. Here. Mark Helwig. Here. Thomas Duffy. Here. Marshall Savitsky. Here. Brian Bisonet. Here. Michael Maestri. Here. Chris Rusk. Here. John Righeimer. Here. Ron Kinsley. Here. Ron Buckholz.
Present.
Ed Peters. Present. You have a full quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Clerk, certification of compliance with open meetings law, please.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. The meeting agenda has been presented. Number 6, public comment. Anyone here that would like to address the board? Alex, anybody online? Okay, thank you. All right, then I'll move on and I'll introduce our Honorable Judge Yackel, please. You may step forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to recognize an individual who has made a tremendously positive impact on the Sawyer County Circuit Court. 4 years ago, Deputy Nicole Ripczynski began working as the Court Services Officer for the Sawyer County Circuit Court. When she started, it was evident to me that she took all of her duties and responsibilities very seriously. Back then, we talked early on about the position, about what her responsibilities would be, and what other things she could do to streamline the often overlooked tasks of the logistics and to make the collaborative effort between the court and the jail as efficient as possible. In working with Nicole, I came to realize that one concern that she had, being the head of court security, was that it would make her less of a law enforcement officer in some people's eyes. But she didn't have to worry. Over the past 4 years, Nicole has almost single-handedly transformed this position. What was once viewed as a boring, tedious position is now an absolutely critical and necessary position in coordinating numerous entities and to squeezing the maximum efficiency out of the court system. She created procedures in dealing with coordination of limited resources, in scheduling defense attorneys, meeting their needs, in processing and reviewing criminal complaints for the DA's office, for addressing my concerns with safety and activities within the courtroom. Her efficiency and the procedures she developed has allowed us to run at breakneck capacity for so long. On top of all these things, she also acquired access to all surveillance cameras and with a watchful eye, protected all of the people within the courthouse, responding in a moment's notice if necessary. And lastly, she has been intricate, and still is, in developing the new procedures for a 2-branch court system, which will be put to the test in a few short weeks. When you place your life in someone's hands, day after day and week after week and year after year, something happens. There develops an inherent and unspoken trust. It did not take long for me to place complete trust in Nicole's ability to keep the courtroom and all of us safe. Over the years, there have been many times where we have relied upon her skill and training as a law enforcement officer. When she told me that she was accepting the position as the new emergency management coordinator, certainly was happy for her, but very discouraged for the future of the court services. However, I didn't have to worry because she had already trained another person, Deputy Caleb Jorstad, to replace her, and he has proven to be a capable and worthy successor. I have a plaque here that I would like to present to Deputy Ripczynski and would like to give her the recognition that she so justly deserves and to let her know that, on a personal note, that she is one of the finest law enforcement officers I have ever known. And she did not know that she was getting this tonight.
Wow.
Just like to read it. It says, presented to Deputy Nicole Ripczynski in appreciation for your resolute, dedicated, and honorable service to the Sawyer County Circuit Court, a shining example of selfless public service. June 2023, Judge John M. Yackel, Sawyer County Circuit Court.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Very well done. All right, then moving on to number 7. Andy, we've got looks like we have our circuit court representatives here. You want to
Yeah,
introduce them, please?
I'll give a little introduction as to the agenda item. So, at the administrative committee last week, I brought up the staffing for the second courtroom. As we've gotten closer to that, something that I anticipated we were going to be addressing. I know since I've started last year, I've heard differing opinions on whether we would need additional staff for the second courtroom. I've heard we weren't going to need any. My inclination was that there was going to be requests for additional support for the second judge. And I've tried to bring that conversation to a head because we're going to have a vacancy in our register and probate juvenile court clerk office. Shannon, that's currently in that position, has taken a different position within the county and will be vacating that position. To me, it's the time if we're going to discuss this, we'll discuss it now because it gives us some flexibility to work with that position. In some counties, the judicial assistants, register and probate, juvenile court clerk, and even clerk of court staff are somewhat interchangeable. They all kind of work in the same circle. So I'd rather discuss this now while we have some flexibility than fill that position and then have to double back a few months from now. So when I brought it up to the administrative committee, one of the comments was that we needed to hear from the court. And so it just so happens that tonight, a very decent sized contingent of court staff are already going to be in town. So we're going to take advantage of it. And maybe I'll just start by introducing Ross Munns, who's the district court administrator. And I'll let them speak for themselves as far as the request of what they've made.
Okay, and Andy, this is a discussion only item on the
discussion.
agenda.
My plan, I've talked to the judge, I've talked to the clerk of court, talked to the judicial assistant to get a feel for what the needs are, what the request is, and what we're doing. So my intent is to try to put something together in the next couple of weeks to start with the committees next month to bring back to the board in July after you hear what they're asking for.
Okay, wonderful. Sir?
Yep. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Andy, for the introduction. I can real quick go through the rest of our contingent here. Chief Judge Maureen Boyle, who's based in Barron County, is with us, as well as Deputy Chief John Anderson, who's based up in Bayfield. Judge-elect Monica Isham is here. And incidentally, that is the reason we happen to all be in town is we have a traditional mentoring dinner orientation that we had planned to coincidentally have up here in Hayward already. So worked out nicely for us to be able to be here and really to continue the dialogue. Part of it is for my own education. Many of you may not know, I spent many years up in North Dakota. That's my home state. Only took the position the last week in February. And so I'm, I think as Andy said, the new Chris Channing. And so getting my feet wet, learning the territory, so to speak. When I started looking at the positions and this exciting opportunity, we're adding the second branch here in Sawyer County. It's going to be a huge benefit to the county. A lot of changes, a lot of positive. And Judge Yackel, I didn't mention because he's already been up to the podium. But so working with Andy, Judge Yackel, Anna, Amparo, Marge, throughout the closing stages of the construction has been exciting. Got to know these folks quite well. Incidentally, wanted to take the opportunity to commend you on the level of collaboration and the expertise that is very evident in the new courtroom, as well as look at this room. So I've been through major projects before, and so what you've been able to pull off is commendable. In terms of the JA's position in specific, the dialogue, I kind of approached Andy after talking with Judge Yackel and Anna and kind of feeling out what their needs are. Granted, there's a lot of unanswered questions at this stage, but basing what I've seen as the formula for success throughout the district, and District 10, we have 14 counties, maybe you know that, many of which, so we have currently 30 judgeships, soon to be 31, and 27 of those judgeships have a one-to-one relationship with a judicial assistant. That's what JA stands for, in case you didn't know. And so that to me has been a formula for success in most cases. That isn't to say there are situations where those judicial assistants also do other duties based on the county and volume. For example, in Rusk, they wear multiple hats. That is somewhat common. And so that would be something to look at, as Andy mentioned, whether we look at opportunities with current positions. I'm all for efficiencies with that. Just to mention the three judges that share a judicial assistant, That happens to be in Eau Claire County where they have 6 branches, so 6 judgeships. So they have 6 judges there with 4 JAs. The reason that works okay for them is because they somewhat specialize in terms of rotation, and so there's kind of a cohesive unit in terms of case types with those judicial assistants, so it does help a little bit with calendaring, and so that's how that's able to work well. And then the other shared situation is in Chippewa County, where they have 3 judges that share 2 JAs, so it's basically 1.5 per judge. So with that, that's where the dialogue began. I happened to be up here, I think 3 weeks ago with Andy, and we were final stages talking about some security things with the new courtroom with the architect. And after that meeting, had the opportunity to talk about, coincidentally, this register and probate position had just been mentioned as tentatively coming open. So that's where it really began. That was my part of my education, just initiating it with Andy. Again, no decisions made, but really wanting to see if there's still an open dialogue or whether that door has closed. We're hoping it's open to discuss.
Sure. Good, thank you, Mr. Munns. So the judicial assistant position, is that paid by the state then?
It's a county paid, but there's that court.
County paid. Is that what you
Correct.
said?
But there's a court offset. What's the total? Court support, semi-annual payments totaling, in which right now I think the Sawyer County total is roughly $52,000, and that's about to double because it's based on the number of judgeships in the county. So for next year, you'll get that plus whatever the change in the totals will be. Now, that's not to say it's specific to the JA. That handles, jury costs, expert witnesses, other things like that. So I didn't want to mislead you on that.
Yes, Ms. Hessel.
What cost are we looking at that the county would have to provide then?
I actually haven't looked at the total cost, but I would guess it's in the neighborhood of 70 to 80,000 for a full-time position.
So Andy, are we possibly including maybe combining these 2 positions? Is that what you're saying, or
Well, I don't want to say combining, but that's where I'm starting. Is we have the register and probate juvenile court clerk position is a full-time position now, and they're requesting another full-time, so that's 2 positions we'd fill. I guess my goal and what I've started talking about is a way to not have to fill 2 spots, but something less than 2. And I think there are ways, there are examples from other counties as well of splitting some duties or having people perform in more than one hat.
Okay, the board have any questions for Mr. Munns, or? Yes, Mr. Kinsley.
Would you explain that again? You said 52,000 times 2, which is covering what, please?
Get my notes. I can read through it.
Court support, right?
Yes, Mr. Kinsley. So the court support payments consists of a list of different items. For example, juror fees under 59, and it gives the state code from which it draws that. And I can give this to you after the meeting or before we leave. Fees for expert witnesses, witness fees, fees for expert witnesses appointed under subsection 90706 by the court. So there's different categories for witness fees. And then number 6 is salary and fringe benefits for judicial assistants for circuit court judges, and any other court costs except costs related to courtroom security, including security personnel, and costs related to rent, utilities, maintenance, rehabilitation, and construction of court facilities.
Yeah, I would like to have a copy of it, if that's acceptable, yes. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, concerns? Mr. Schlueter.
Thank you. Just a little further question there. How much of the 52, now 102,000 will be available to cover the cost of the JA?
I think that's up to the county to decide, and it also depends on the volume of, for example, jury costs that you might have in an average year. Maybe Marge could lend some more knowledge to that, but in other words, sir, it's not a set amount. It's based on need, but you do get the full amount. How you allocate that is up to the county.
Andy?
Yeah, so
But
Ross and I
hang
just
on a
talked
sec.
about this fee earlier. Right now, it's allocated all in the clerk of court budget. So the 52,000 is in the clerk of court, and the clerk of court's budget has all of the salaries for the clerk of court, the register and probate, the judicial assistant, guardian ad litem fees, everything's in there. So it basically it offsets the budget, so it reduces the amount of levy dollars that the budget needs.
One nice benefit of the second branch, you get to double that. Andy, can you make copies?
Yep. So I guess one question I have, Mr. Munns, is with adding our second branch, then can we expect more revenue from like court fees and things like that could offset some of these expenses?
At least initially, that's yet to be determined because the case volume isn't going. It's dictated by all the same purposes that have led up to this. The fact that the state has deemed through their formula for awarding the second branch that there was and it's usually on a 3-year average that Sawyer County had been close to 1.65 or 1.8 judge need. So 1.8, in other words, close to 2 judges were needed, but you've been operating with 1 the whole time. So to answer your question, sir, at least initially, we don't know. Hopefully there's not more crime, but that's what would dictate.
Right. Well, we're sure hoping for better efficiency and moving our folks through and getting diversion programs initiated sooner. So maybe that would affect our jail population and somehow assist us in many ways.
It's a good way to look at it, yes.
Yep. Okay, the board, any other questions? Nope. All right, thank you
Yes, sir.
very much. Does anyone else? Judge Boyle, do you want to say anything or?
Unless anyone has a question for me, I hadn't planned to add anything.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Andy, does that conclude then? All right. We'll move on then to number 8. Consider approval of our meeting minutes from May 18th, 2023. Ms. Hessel?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, got a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Duffy to approve our meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 9. Appointments to the Sawyer County Board of Appeals. Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, we have 2 members of the Board of Appeals with expiring terms, Al Gerber and Jim Tiffany, and both are being put forward for renewing or re-upping for another 3-year term on the board.
They're both looking for just 3-year renewals then, is that correct?
Yep.
Are they recommended by anyone? Andy,
Recommended
or
by the zoning department.
recommended by the zoning department? Ms. Hessel?
I make a motion to approve Al Gerber and Jim Tiffany for a 3-year term
Mr.
for the Board of
Buckholz?
Appeals.
Okay, I got a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve the appointments of Al Gerber and Jim Tiffany to another 3-year term on the Sawyer County Board of Appeals. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 10, Zoning Committee Chair Report, and I think Ms. Hessel is going to give that today.
Yes. So the zoning committee will hold its monthly public meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. For May, the committee approved 5 conditional use permits, including a new reclamation plan for a non-metallic mining operation. The committee continues to work through some ordinance amendments that are needed within the current zoning code. The newly approved tourist rooming house ad hoc committee will hold its first meeting on Tuesday, June 20th at 10 a.m. in the Sawyer County boardroom. This concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hessel. Any questions, concerns for zoning? If not, We'll move on then. Number 11, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Mr. Buckholz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that, Stacy, for doing that for me. Yeah, the public safety met on June 1st. The circuit court judge, there was no report. Courthouse remodel update, I'll leave that till later on the agenda. I think Andy has that, or Mr. Kinsley, one of the two. Clerk of Court's office, written report by Mrs. Kelsey advised that 2 jury trials have been completed in the new courtroom. The Sheriff Department report, Communication Center report, written report was provided. The COM Center had recently had 4 training dispatchers to regular part-time to begin picking up shifts. 3 of the 4 are still in the training phase. Patrol is still assisting in filling the voids and training in dispatch. Plans are moving forward with the ESI/Next Gen 911 services, and a patrol report by Lieutenant Rapinski. Patrol volumes increased last month with a report of 852 citations and warnings, and statistics provided. Area LEO participated in a local softball event of the Hayward Community School District to benefit and raise for the ALS, as well as receive firearms and emergency vehicles operation training will be taking place soon. And Lieutenant Rapinski advised that the schools are preparing for summer breaks, and the department is preparing for summer events in the area. A jail report was given by Lieutenant Waller. Population, the average daily population is 70.84, with the month of May being 67.25. Current inmate unemployment is 77%. Lieutenant Waller reviewed the statistics and committee. Communication specialist, the report was given by Sheriff Morotek. They have been working on Mr. Kruk on improvements to the radio system, and they still are working on the state WISCOM. The code enforcement, a written report was given by Brandon. Haven't started for dog license. Review has been decreased. Admission to the shelter remains steady, with the most return to the owners. Mr. Butler advised that the number of calls for dogs needing vet care are up. The shelter building has received some improvements. Complaints from zoning and public health are increasing with the summer activity. Emergency management, Mrs. Rapinski advised that the local flooding did not meet the county-wide disaster amount to apply for grant funds, and the local town and villages were provided with information regards to the DDA and monies possible through DOT. They continue to work with the winter storm cleanup and conduct tabletop exercise with the Sawyer County Hazmat team. Child Department, a written report was provided. There was 1,130 open cases. April support is due in the amount of $864,022.24. Amount collected was $615.35.16. And the child MOU with the LCO was presented by Mr. Alvarado, and a motion was made by Mr. Peters and second by Mr. Helwig to approve that, and it was taken as a 4-0 without a negative vote. Emergency services report, ambulance billing, a report was provided. Mr. Frummel reviewed and transfer stats. The town of Edgewater, this item has been brought forward from last month. No additional updates may need to be addressed. And the criminal courting update, council, I'll leave that for Mr. Alvarado. That ends my report, Mr. Chair.
Wow, very nice. Well done, Mr. Buckholz. Any questions, concerns for our Public Safety Committee?
What's the status of my ask about a female coming back? How many female jailers do we have?
What do we got, Sheriff? 2?
We have 5 full-timers. We have several in training, and we
Yeah.
Complete their mandatory certification, which is going to leave us a little shortfall staffing wise, and we're going to try to get it done before then, but we may have to wait until they return from this country and then they'll drop back to the health and safety.
Thank you.
I think at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, they reported 15 female inmates still housed in Barron, and I did ask that question, what effect does that have on our county budget? So thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Kinsley. Okay, thank you again, Mr. Buckholz. Then we'll move on to number 12, Public Works Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair report, maintenance department's doing a fine job. You're in the new building. They built desks for us. They're doing a lot of extra stuff. I think they do a wonderful job. The airport, they put together a master plan for replacing the airport runway. So there's a lot going on out there, and the highway department is getting a lot of flack because of the way the roads are, and we need to repair roads sooner than later, which they're working on doing the best they can. That concludes my report. Courthouse remodel update. Did they get the blacktop out here yet? They did.
We did.
So that's done, and Mario's gonna turn it over to us on August 1st, and we have everything by August 14th. Questions, concerns, smiles? Thank you. Letter C. There's a hangar that was up for renewal, and it was approved at the Public Works Committee.
Okay, so this is amendment to our Sawyer County Airport hangar area lease, correct?
Yep.
Madam Clerk, Mr. Kinsley, so this is an action item.
Yep.
Mr. Helwig,
I make a motion to approve the request for airport hangar renewal.
Mr. Peters?
I'll second that.
A motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Peters to approve the amendment to our Sawyer County Airport hangar area lease. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I had a question on section 4 on rent. The annual rent is $473, and it said the rent shall be adjusted pursuant to paragraph 4 of the lease, but I didn't see any adjustment over a 10-year period.
This is because it's a renewal. This is an old, this is not a lease where the rent is going to be adjusted because it still had one renewal left. So when the renewal runs out, then the new lease payments go into effect. There's a new.
So they're adjusted incrementally over a 10-year period then?
Every 5 years.
Yep, by CPI.
Because it seems pretty low. Okay, thank you very much.
And I would just put the new leases, when these renewals run out, then the rent does increase substantially.
And that's in September then?
It's 10 years from now.
Sorry about missing your light, Ms. Wilson. Thank you, Ms. Hessel. So I guess I didn't get a full vote on that. So I've got a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Peters, to approve this amendment to our Sawyer County Airport hangar area lease. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Kinsley?
No.
Okay, letter D.
Let me add a little bit more about the airport hangar. The airport hangars are for 20 years, and then you get a 10-year extension. This is the 10-year extension. That's what that 10 years is for. Okay, does that help a little bit? Letter D, highway KK speed reduction update. There was a request out on KK. There was a farm just over a hill, and they're concerned about pulling out on the road the farm machinery. And our commissioner went out and looked at it, and they recommended that we reduce it down the speed limit from 55 down to 45. That was approved at the Public Works Committee.
Okay, and is that an action item here, sir?
Yes.
So, Ms. Hessel.
Can I ask a question? Or we have
Yes.
to wait till?
Nope, I'll allow it. Ask, please.
Was this was looked at by law enforcement and they approved it, right? Is that my understanding? It wasn't just the commissioner, it was law enforcement also, right?
I'm not sure if law enforcement approved it or not. I'm not sure.
We discussed it at
Traffic safety.
safety
Yeah.
meeting, and law enforcement as well as other community members are there, and that passed unanimously there with traffic safety.
So, Mr. Kinsley, what is the reduction in speed then from
55 down to 45.
55 to 45? Mr. Buckholz?
I make a motion to approve the speed reduction on County KK from 55 to 45.
Okay, Mr. Hellwig.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Hellwig, to approve the county KK speed reduction from 55 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify, no, we want to. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Mr. Kinsley? Okay. Moving on then to number 13, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee Chair Report. Mr. Peters?
Yes, sir. Land, Water, and Forest Committee, Forest Resources Committee met on June 7th, and we had a rather full schedule. Number one, we approved events coming up, well, now past in a couple of cases. Epic Bike Fest, the Shawamagun 100, the Kamba Women's Weekend Clinic, and the Stubborn Mule Adventure Race were all approved without negative vote. The most time-consuming portion of our meeting was under the land sales via Wisconsin surplus auction. One parcel sold above the asking price, and so was therefore approved automatically. One parcel sale was denied, and 8 parcels sold below the asking price. This did raise a question as to whether or not we need to discuss how to set asking prices in the future. But that is for a future time.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda, or on our agenda, was Act 216, Tax Deed Resolution, which we'll be talking about in just a minute. There was under land records, written reports were provided, and there have been a lot of transfers, 173 transfers, and some other materials to process in May. Sawyer County Forestry Department, recreational trails. The ATV season is off to a fast start, but there's still maintenance to be completed. County Forestry, a written report was provided. There are active sales in May, and we are on target for budget as we're going forward. The mosquito population, as around the county, is making work difficult, and there will be a restriction on harvesting. We're currently within the restriction on harvesting in oak because of oak wilt transfer, and so that will continue through the 15th of July. DNR Forestry is moving ahead with their inspections, and several staff are moving especially into areas of fire prevention due to dry conditions. Zoning report was provided, and they have had people pass or go through training on various topics of aquatic invasive species, and they continue to grow purple loosestrife beetles to control the spread of purple loosestrife in the county. Mr. Sheptick provided a USDA report with upcoming dates for agricultural purposes. Mr. Bissonette advised that they received notice of a grant application approval to address Chippewa flowage milfoil, which is an aquatic endangered or invasive species, excuse me. Other than the Act 216 deed resolution, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peters. So then under Land, Water, Forestry B, Andy, we have a resolution to look at concerns of Act 216.
Yes, This resolution was worked on with some other counties, and intention is to send it on to the governor and the legislature, but also primarily to submit it to Wisconsin Counties Association for the annual business meeting, so it becomes a part of the WCA legislative platform. What the resolution is pointing out is that a few years ago, Act 216 was passed. This this affected the sale of tax delinquent properties, so that after 3 years of back taxes, the county can take the property and then sell the property to recover the taxes that have gone unpaid, that we've already incurred the liability of paying out to the other taxing jurisdictions. That's how a county would recover those funds. The Act 216 put a provision in that for up to 5 years after you take the property, if you sell it in whatever amount you sell it for above the back taxes, you have to try and track down the property owner that let it go on back taxes and provide those proceeds to them, which is additional administrative work for us. It doesn't allow us to recover any potential investment. It also clouds the act requires the county to pay off any liens placed on the property, which is actually in conflict that during the tax foreclosure process, during that the liens are supposed to be discharged. But it essentially asks counties to act as realtors for these properties and not recover any of the proceeds for that. I can apply this specifically to what Mr. Peters just shared, that we had a number of properties that the county took on back taxes, tried to sell them by closed bid a number of years ago. They did not sell, so then they go on our direct sale list, and there they've sat without anybody buying them. So they were put onto the auction site as a way to try to divest of them, to get them on the tax roll. And so there were 3 properties, I believe, on that list that the county committee did approve selling below what the asking price was, but did that because the economics weren't going to change. The property was not likely to generate any more revenue. It did not cover the costs we had into the property, because 3 of those properties we had to incur cleanup costs or demolition because of the state of the property when we acquired it. So this resolution would allow counties to keep proceeds above the back taxes for some of these properties and put them into a fund to help clean up blighted properties. And that's what used to happen in the past, is you'd have some properties you would make a little bit on, some you would lose on, and they would all balance out. Now properties that sell above the cost that the county's incurred, you have to give back to the prior property owner. So this resolution is asking for the legislature to go back and amend 216 to address some of those issues.
So, Mr. Peters, some of our county land sale parcels then would sell for less than what the delinquent taxes are, the cleanup.
That is the conundrum we're in right now.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Kinsley. Motion by Mr. Kinsley to approve the resolution. Looking for a
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Peters. To approve the resolution requesting the state of Wisconsin to address concerns of Act 216 relating to distributing the proceeds from the sale of tax delinquent property to the former owner. Yes, Ms. Hessel.
So the Act 216 was just enacted in 2022. Why hasn't the Counties Association taken it on prior to a resolution being needed?
If I understand the question, the Counties Association was not in favor of it when Act 216 was passed? Okay.
Mr. Weaver.
Andy, could we adjust our base charges for these properties that we take in so that we don't have a profit on the record? I mean, we should be able to adjust the value of the work that we put in.
We can account, in order to retain the funds, we have to provide an accounting of our actual costs spent on the property. So it's the back taxes plus any labor we can account for, plus staff time in the treasurer's office. So we can build in some of those costs, but we couldn't keep anything above that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Peters to approve this resolution, and this is an electronic vote, right, Madam Clerk? So when she's ready, everyone should grab our clickers.
Voting should be open.
Motion is to approve the resolution.
Mr. Maestri, could you cast your vote? Could you repeat that, sir? Yes. Mr. Rusk? Yes. Okay, looks like everybody's in. And it
Okay.
passed 15-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Any other land, water, Mr. Peters, or you said something about the
No, sir.
mosquitoes?
I've been feeding them at my yard quite well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peters. All right, moving on to number 14, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report. Mr. Schlueter.
Thank you. Our new director is focusing on hiring and onboarding staff. There are still Child Protective Services openings, supervisor opening. She's helping to support the team. In addition, is also working closely with adult long-term care staff, and their supervisor's last day will be on the 29th of this month. On a positive note, they are starting to see increase in applicants for open positions. Adult Protective Services has been reaching out to local banks to provide training on how to prevent financial abuse of elders. They've received good response from that outreach. Economic support is seeing a large influx of calls due to the change in requirements for those services. Food share and medical benefits are up. Narcan training has started and distribution has begun and is coming along quite well. They've distributed, what is it here? Like something like 60 or 70 cans, and more people than that have taken the training. So that was from the overview. This is from our new health nurse, public health nurse. Sawyer County has received a grant from DHS to be, here it is, here's the Narcan project provider. This including Narcan distributing Narcan at no charge and going through training. We've had 39 people take the training and 56 boxes of Narcan has been distributed, 2 to a box, so it was 112. Yeah. AmeriCorps program partnership with Marshfield Clinic to have a public AmeriCorps. Sorry about this, folks, my glasses. To have a public health care assistant posted. County received a grant from DHS to be a Narcan direct provider. Again, there's some overlap in these. Staff conference, recent conference and training has taken place, focusing on agency preparedness and response under the roof. It's an everything under one roof project. Critical care incidents, stress defining training as part of the chronic disease injury prevention. Staff attended opioid summit and harm reduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schlueter. Mr. Schlueter, how was our out-of-county placements budget holding up for this year? Do you see any variances or
There's so far there has not been an increase, but we have been told that 4 people potentially could end up in out-of-county placement, with 2 being really probable. So we'll just have to wait and see, but it's only 1/4. Too early to extrapolate that out for the whole year.
Sure. And then, Mr. Alvarado, we have a Health and Human Services staff member that's retiring after many years with the county. Ms. Hannes?
Yeah, today was Cindy Hannes' last day in the finance office. I don't offhand know how many years, but 27, it's over 20. So.
That's to be commended, though. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schluter. Any questions for Health and Human Services? Okay, if not, we'll move on then to number 15, Finance Committee Chair Report. Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really proud of the finance committee, the finance administration. They're doing a nice job. We go over a lot of things at our meeting. We go over the finance department reports. The auditors are in there doing the audits. We talk about investment updates, and I'm amazed in the investment updates how much money we're making doing that. So I'm proud of the administration taking care of stuff like that to get us extra money. We talk about the capital improvement updates of purchasing and how to handle the equipment. We talked about performance budgets parameters is going out in the month of July, which is all the departments, and he's got a plan to put that together, so that's good. EMS ambulance billing, we talk about that every month, and we seem to be getting a little bit more all the time, and I give them credit for that. For granted, we know we're only going to get so much from Medicaid and Medicare, but they seem to be maxing that out, so that's good. And we also, ARPA funds, unspent amount remains the same. We talked about opioid funds and any surplus funds that are used. That concludes my report, unless someone's got a question.
Mr. Helwig.
Do we have any, excuse me, decision on where the opioid money's going to go towards?
Maybe Mr. Alvarado can fill that in.
Yeah, we talked about that at CJCC on Wednesday. Just it's been sidetracked a little bit because of the switch in staff in the human services, but primarily public health. So they're going to be starting that back up and bringing back a budget next month on how to allocate some of the opioid funds. They have been getting other grant dollars as well that have become available from the state that are through the opioid program. And some efforts already with public health. They were able to fund a recovery coach that's going to be working with Beziki and the county. So there are other monies coming in outside of the money that the county received for the opioid settlement.
Did we, Mr. Kinsley, Mr. Alvarado, did we budget for a second judicial assistant for the last quarter of 23?
We did not budget for a second.
But we knew that the second branch was going to open in August, correct?
Right.
We thought they would share a judicial assistant, or what were your thoughts?
My understanding was that they were going to share, and then when I asked about that last year during the budget process, they were not going to ask until the second judge was on board.
Care to add to that, sir?
We were constantly told when we built the second courtroom there would be no extra expenses, and that was constantly brought to us. And I think probably inside we all knew better than that, but here they come. I'm sure administration will do the best they can to budget for it.
Is that true? You're nodding your head? Okay.
We're going to do the best we can and bring you some options.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kinsley. All right. Moving on, number 16 then. Economic Development UW Extension Committee Chair Report, Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on June 5th. We had a report, first of all, from the UW Extension. They provided information on the 4-H project they're doing in the county, and they gave us also a SWOT analysis that's now been completed, and the results were shared. We had an interesting report from the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. We learned that Sawyer County tourism had a record-breaking year. The state of Wisconsin also had a record-breaking year. They released their 2022 economic impact data, showing that they took in $23.7 billion, that's with a B, dollars. Sawyer County had a total tourism impact of $141 million. The state impact was the highest ever. Sawyer County's surpassed the previous record of 131,000. So our local executive director for tourism says that marketing really works. Then we heard from Northwest Regional Planning. They gave us a verbal update of their activities for the month. And Economic Development gave us their report. They're working on new housing study, and they tell us they're coming close to hiring an executive director. We had the written reports from both the the Winter and the Hayward libraries. Winter's received a $1,200 grant, and they've created a vegetable garden with the fourth grade students, and they're going to raise these vegetables and give them away come fall. So anyone has no reason to go hungry. Then from the Berkey, they had a big epic bike ride last weekend with over 1,000 bikers on the trail. On the Berkey ski race, there are now over 7,000 plus registrations. Coming on next will be the Lumberjack Festival, which is going to be on the weekend of the 20th. And they have a lot of competitors from Australia, New Zealand, and all of Europe. So it'll be perhaps the strongest field they've had in months and years. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hessel.
Was there an ATV report?
Pardon?
Was there an ATV? Was there a motorized vehicle report?
No, she said she wasn't able to. She was. What does she have?
I was there.
She
I
sold
was
her
just
house,
trying
I
to get
think,
you
or
to
something.
say it.
Yeah.
What about Muskie Festival? Isn't that coming up?
Yeah, I
Mr.
don't have
Duffy?
any report on Muskie Fest.
Okay.
What you know? What's going on there?
Muskie Fest?
Yeah.
A lot of fishing and drinking beer. I
Let's-
don't
hey,
know.
I think we have
Put
three.
a
we
good
have
plug
three,
in from. Okay, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Any other questions?
I think we had three
For
queen
economic
candidates.
development. That is great to hear. A record year, huh? All right.
Tweed?
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Yes, Mr. Schluter.
Mr. Duffy, can you hear me? Yeah. How do they how do they get that 141 million figure? What is that based on?
I don't know.
Is it
It's from the
possible?
DOR.
Mr. Alvarado.
The State Department of Tourism hires a outside consultant. They prepare an economic impact report for the state every year.
Okay, does that mean that 141 million was spent in Sawyer County?
Based on their, based on their study, that's what they're saying is that there's 141 million dollars worth of tourism expenditures in Sawyer County in 2022. And they do that by they do some survey data, they pull I would say the NAICS codes from certain businesses that they believe are tourism expenditure businesses.
And it was
I've
covered
worked
by
in
the
I've
Sawyer
worked in
County
the
Fair.
numbers before, and I would always tell people, focus less on the dollar amount, and focus more like how much percent increase or decrease the county has had. Because you can debate all day long what's a tourism expenditure, but as long as every county, they're using the same stick with every county, at least you can see if you're going up or down relative to the whole, or relative to your neighbors. And so, I think Sawyer County's percent increase was above the statewide average, so that's a good sign. That's what I would tell you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. All right, then moving on to number 17, we have a resolution, Andy Lacoudere versus Evers decision, discussion, possible action. You want to explain that for us, please?
Sure. This is similar to the last resolution, and this is primarily coming forward now, so it could be concluded or submitted to WCA for the business meeting and become a part of the legislative platform. Again, this was collaborated with, really led by some other counties, but we're in the same boat as them. So in the sign of solidarity, bringing it to the board here for consideration. This is in regards to the tribal land taxation issue. I think I've covered this a little bit in the past, but in August of last year, the Federal Court of Appeals ruled that lands owned by tribal members or the tribe itself now that are within the reservation boundaries and have a property tax liability no longer have a property tax liability. They're not taxable. Generally, these are lands that were once tribally owned or by tribal members, and then were bought by somebody who was not associated with the tribe, and that's when they became taxable. Now they've been sold back to the tribe or tribal members and so they should not be taxed. That was the ruling of the appeals court. This has some impact on local governments because the tax revenue goes away. Here in Sawyer County, it's not a significant issue. I mean, it's an issue. The town of Hayward, town of Bass Lake, Sawyer County will all lose tax revenue because of this. It's not as big an issue as it is up in Bayfield and Ashland counties, where they have some townships that had a lot of property within the township boundaries that was being taxed and no longer is. I think there was a lot more buying back of property, and just the concentration in certain towns was significant. So this is asking for the state to step in and assist. It's really not a problem that the local government's created. It's more a state and federal problem, but it's requesting that the Counties Association assists with legislation that would have the state reimburse the counties and towns for the loss of that tax revenue for a period of time. So specifically, and I should say the other issue, and again, we've looked at it here and it's not as significant, but in some of those other counties where this is happening, there were back taxes. There were properties that were not, the taxes were not being paid, so the counties were settling up with the school districts and the townships. And now that the court decision was made, they can no longer go back and recover those back taxes. So that's number one, under the now therefore may be resolved. That's what number one is the unrecoupable settlement payments. And then number two is asking for the state to make aid payments for local governments to recover the lost tax revenue within their budgets.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Buckholz.
Make the motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duffy?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the resolution in support of the Lacoudere versus Evers decision. Any discussion? Ms. Hessel?
What committee did this resolution come out of?
Administration.
The administration?
Administrative committee.
Administrative committee.
Yep.
Because generally it's been a recommendation by a committee. We've not usually gone forward without that. So.
Okay, so this is a electronic vote again, Madam Clerk?
Sure.
So we've got a motion and a second in support of this resolution. Are we ready?
Oh, voting is open. Mr. Maestri?
Voting's open.
Please cast your vote.
Yes.
Mr. Rusk?
Yes.
Okay. Jason's is in. And it passed 14-1, one nay vote. And for some reason, I'm not allowed to share this. Let me try one. Oh, there it
That's
is.
right.
It's shared.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on then to number 18, Policy Manual Reimbursement Update Amendment. Mr. Alvarado.
Yes, so this is coming from the Finance and Administrative Committees. It's went through both the last couple of months. This would amend the Employee Policy Manual. Prior practice or prior language really stresses the use of a county fleet vehicle for travel. This is opening the door more for personal vehicles to be used. And really the primary reason is that travel has changed, especially since COVID, where right now our fleet, we're just not putting the miles on, and it's actually costing us more money than if we just paid people 80% of the IRS rate, which is the same, what we charge for the fleet use to department is currently 80% of the IRS rate. That was changed last fall by a resolution, and we reimburse private vehicles at the same rate. So I believe right now the federal rate is 62.5 cents, and right now the fleet, last year in 21 it cost us 79 cents a mile, and then last year was 63 cents a mile. Then we're on track again this year to be in the 60 cents range. So taking it down to 80% of the fleet rate would take us down closer to 50 cents a mile. So we still require, I mean, if you can't transport the public in your personal vehicle, there are obviously special, some departments have specialized vehicles. Employees would have to provide proof of insurance before they could use their personal vehicle and receive reimbursement. But that's really the language changes in here, opening up to allow, whenever possible, they should use a county vehicle, but they are allowed to use a personal vehicle and receive reimbursement for it.
Do we expect any budget impact with this amendment and changes? Either way, positive or negative?
We're hoping to see a positive change by lessening the cost of travel. And then also, the other part of that though is we'll be looking at downsizing the fleet. We have, for the amount of miles that are being driven by county employees, we have too large of a fleet, so a lot of the expense is actually the depreciation of having that large of that many vehicles. We don't expect, at least it doesn't look like, I mean, travel has come back a little bit from what it was in 2020 and 21, but we're still probably about half of what we were, and a lot of the meetings and reasons people used to travel, they don't have to travel for anymore, just to the use of remote work and Zooms and Teams meetings, and some of the program rules have changed, so there's less contact with consumers. So we don't anticipate a big uptick in demand for travel. The other thing I'll mention about budget too, though, is this is my message to department heads: is that this is the budget you have for travel and conferences, and so you need to manage that. And so that's encouraging people to ride together, controlling who goes to meetings or who can bring information back. So that's always the way we manage the travel budget. So we don't see any need to expand travel budgets. They should be able to manage what they have now within even allowing personal vehicle use.
Okay, so this is a discussion action item, pleasure of the board, these travel and expense reimbursement amendments to our policy. Ms. Hessel.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the reimbursement policy.
Mr. Kinsley. Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Kinsley to approve the policy manual reimbursement update amendments as presented. Is there any further discussion? Is this a voice vote? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on then to number 19, County Administrator's Report.
Yeah, I apologize. I was pulling up the report within the agenda, and I noticed that some reason the March report uploaded into the document. So Lynn's going to change out the report, and then Alex, I emailed you this month's. I don't know if you can pull that up, but I was looking, and
What's your March again?
Not everything has changed that much since March, but so just a courthouse update. We're at just over 7.4 million in work, so about 1.5 left. There's not a lot of updates on any specific construction items. Things have been going smoothly with the second courtroom remodeling. Like we already discussed, the blacktop or the curb went down last week. The blacktop went down today. I think they'll be back tomorrow to get the parking lot lined. We're probably not going to open it up this weekend, just because if you look at the parking lot, you might note it looks a little smaller than it used to be because of the slope of where they built this building and the slope of recontouring the parking lot. They had to narrow things up a little bit based on where the lights went. So what that means is you're going to have a lot sharper turns into parking spots. And with some of the vehicles that get driven in northern Wisconsin, we don't want sharp turns on soft blacktop. So we're going to make sure it's good and hard before we let the public on it. But I would think certainly within the week, we'll get that open and put that into use, and then you'll be able to use this entrance to get to board meetings and access to the building. We did at Public Works decide to move ahead with a couple of the smaller items that we had talked about I brought forth a list of kind of everything we're seeing last month. We've put most of that aside, and we'll, if wanted to revisit that at the end of the project. But we did move ahead with getting flags and podiums and finding somebody to do the state seal to hang up in the courtrooms, some of those smaller items. Otherwise, beyond the construction project, the budget process for 2024 is underway. Finance Department has sent out the budget timeline and preparation instructions to the departments after they were looked at the Finance Committee. Not any significant changes in process. A lot of some of the work's already been done with the capital improvement planning that we did a little earlier as part of the bond issue. The bond issue is proceeding. We received kind of the preliminary legal documents and have a rating call at the end of the month, preparing for the sale. No update on union negotiations. There's been some exchange of information, but really no progress or no other update than that. Not much different in the positions we're recruiting for. We do have, we've been rebuilding the Child Protective Service Division within Human Services. So at this time, we've filled out or hired for all of the staff or case manager positions. And we have an interview next week for a supervisor. So that's moving along. And right now it's just a matter of getting, kind of like the jail, you hire the staff, but they have to be all trained and run through the state of Wisconsin program before we can really start assigning them a lot of cases. In there I have just the position update on the judicial assistant. So I think we've covered that. But yeah, I wanted to get this on the table because of the vacancy. I knew some of the discussion from when the second court was being considered. So it's not like a typical position request, but I do have some ideas. I haven't been able to sit down, revisit with our elected officials who are involved, but I am hoping to come back to the committees with something that is less than 2 employees, at least as a proposal to bring and hopefully come back to the board with next month. We have our managers training starting in July. We have that set up and have dates now selected. So we're looking forward to that. We've got a lot of people who have moved up within the county into manager positions, and we need to give them adequate training to do that. It's not easy moving from being a kind of a being one of the workers to being one of the boss people. So we want to give them training and understand what it's like to be a manager. Also, to address some of our shortfalls in staffing, we are going down the road of training some of our own staff to fill positions we have a hard time filling. So we are having a program to have AEMTs start classes to become paramedics, and sponsoring existing staff in the Sheriff's Department to go to the Law Enforcement Academy. The state does reimburse for the Law Enforcement Academy, so we're piloting that with a couple employees in each area. It would involve, it's within the budget, it would involve them signing employment contracts so that once we train them, they have a minimum amount of years to continue working for us to recover those costs. Nothing really new with Corp Counsel, still working on the same types of cases. Nothing new on the opioid settlement that we haven't discussed. Outstanding items with the LCO, the child support MOU is the last one. So that means we had the 161 agreement for child placements, the ATV agreement, and the MOU were kind of the ones we have been working on. Those are all taken care of. At Public Works, we did discuss, if you weren't aware, in April, we received a resolution that the tribal governing board had passed regarding road bans, essentially saying that within the reservation that they were going to exempt certain vehicles, emergency vehicles, their LCO vehicles, propane trucks, those types of things from the road bans, which it's one of those shared jurisdiction issues. At that time, by the time the committee was able to discuss it, the road bans were already off. And we were also in the midst of trying to get to the ATV agreement done, so we didn't really bring it up. But we do want to at least have a conversation about how things could work moving forward. So we're reaching out to Chairman Taylor to see if we can have a conversation about that. And just be open about it. If we know that's going to be an issue going forward, we want to be proactive in addressing it. And I think otherwise, Mr. Kinsley updated on the airport. State budget, I didn't fill this in because things are still kind of changing by the day. I believe at this point the Senate has passed the changes to shared revenue. I haven't heard, the Assembly hasn't taken it up, I don't believe. In the know, did they? No, I think they still have to pass the Senate version now. But anyway, if the Senate version were to go through, we would go from about $25,000 in shared revenue to $284,000-ish. There is some, I guess, restrictions on where you can spend those monies, but it's for the most part, it's roads, law enforcement, court services, emergency services. So, but until that gets all the way through and all the involved parties settle on the final budget, that's probably nothing solid yet.
What about broadband? Haven't heard you talk about that.
Broadband?
Yeah.
So we did get 2 more. We're getting the gaps filled in. The BevCom received another broadband grant in the southern portion of the county, and Novato received one. Novato's working on a project in the winter that was already funded, and then they received another grant. I want to say it covers parts of Bass Lake.
Okay.
But Mr. Peters is on the Wendigo. Thank you, Wendigo. Mr. Peters is serving on the BEAD group, the regional BEAD group, that's doing their work in preparation for the next round of funding in the fall. I don't know if you have any updates from that, but.
There were no meetings since my last report last month, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andy. Any questions, concerns for Mr. Alvarado? Ms. Hessel?
So the resolution that we just passed is being addressed in the state budget. Does that affect the resolution that?
If it's addressed, the WCA won't put it on their legislative agenda.
Thank you.
I should just so the counties and WCA, we're involved in the discussions to get it in. There was an initial proposal in the governor's budget, so that we were involved in those. We provided numbers. The numbers that were in the resolution were provided to them for that. I haven't seen what's in the budget now.
Well, they're just trying to fix the issue instead of handing out money. That's why I put it on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Correspondence, reports. Mr. Kinsley, you have something you want to share with us, sir?
I have two things. A while back, I received a phone call, and I haven't got an update, that there was a theft out at the Navigaga Transit. And I've been working to try to help resolve that. I don't know how far along it is, but I think that's absolutely terrible that something like that would happen on our county land. And the second thing I have is Civil Air Patrol out at the airport on Sunday, July 2nd. They have a pancake feed. It's all you can eat. It's from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's our airport. We need to support it, and this is one way you can support it. It's for the Civil Air Patrol. They help train a lot of young people. To me, it's a pretty important event. If you can attend, that'd be great. That's what I have. Thank you.
What about the dairy breakfast? You haven't said anything about that. Did we miss it?
No. Same time as the Muskie Fest.
Yep.
Saturday, the 24th.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.